Number 10. Uranos. While Thanos didn't outwardly appear to be nervous or afraid around his great uncle Uranos in the recent Eternals comic series, or at least in the one-shot issue that sort of tied into Eternals the Heretic, I'm not fully convinced that this was actually true. In fact, I might even think that Thanos was perhaps bluffing. This is because Uranos is known to be even more of a killer than his great nephew. Even if it didn't appear as though Thanos was affected by this knowledge, we already know from other experiences that Thanos does not like to have his purpose undermined in this way. He likes to be the best and greatest agent of death, and Uranos, if not locked up, compete with him for that title. Which likely means that Thanos, if Uranos were fully unleashed, would be afraid and intimidated by him, probably seeking to destroy him eventually. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love this video, if you love when we talk about Thanos, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9. Mephisto. While in Infinity Gauntlet, it seems as though Thanos is actually playing Mephisto for a fool, making him in essence behave like a servant to him. In reality, it kinda seems more likely that Mephisto, in awe of Thanos' power, is actually along for the ride and looking for ways to manipulate him. This wouldn't be the first time Mephisto would do something like this in Thanos' life either. It is also implied in issue number 38 of the current Avengers run that Mephisto actually manipulated Thanos in his past as well, possibly even having a hand in encouraging Kid Thanos to join up with the Masters of Evil and take on the prehistoric Avengers. Also, Mephisto, or the collection of Mephistos, could later make a deal with them. Who knows? I personally think, while Thanos might not see the threat that Mephisto is as a villain, that Thanos could fear and perhaps in the future will fear him when he realizes just how much Mephisto may have been manipulating him this whole time. After all, it was actually Mephisto in Infinity Gauntlet that kind of first helped plant the idea of Thanos snapping. Seriously, go back and read that issue, you'll see what I'm talking about. Number 8. Ultron. While Thanos may not have seen this coming in the What If Disney Plus streaming animated series episode, if he had, he likely would have been wise enough to have actually been afraid of Ultron. Ultron here is nuts. Here Ultron ends up becoming all-powerful after Thanos arrives on an already decimated Earth, because in this reality Ultron actually won. Thanos, having the rest of the Infinity Stones at this point, does not prove powerful enough to stop this alternate Ultron, who actually kills him just using the Mind Stone alone and takes the rest of the Infinity Stones for himself. Number 7. Kang the Conqueror. Kang the Conqueror is someone most people might underestimate in the world of comics. This is because he kinda has a ridiculous look in terms of his character design, and probably also because he's known for floating around in kinda like an invisible space chair. It's not the easiest look to adapt to a modern setting and have it feel, you know, anything but ridiculous. It just kind of, it's a look. However, Kang is also a time-traveling villain and the master of time. We have seen both Thanos and Kang reveal that each is intimidated at times by the other. And I know some people are probably gonna be like, but Amanda, what about the time Kang was like, I literally have been avoiding you in like every timeline? Well, there's another alternate reality where something different happens, okay? While Thanos might pack more of a physical punch, Kang could also probably just erase Thanos from existence if he really wanted to. And in an alternate reality at least, he has defeated Thanos using his power over time to basically turn him to dust. So that's also happened. Really, it could go either way. I'm very interested to see if there will be any interaction between these characters in the MCU. I know Thanos is gone, but what if he came back? I don't know. Number 6. Death. Not really a villain per se, though some could see her as such. Death is still definitely an antagonist at the very least. She is the embodiment of death, and I would say that Thanos both respects and fears her during his time pining after her. He is afraid of being rejected by her, that's for sure. Thanos has a complex relationship with death, being an agent of death as someone who also happens to be in love with it, and the feminine entity who embodies it. Thanos at one point pleaded with Death to stay with him after she left him in essence at the altar, following their fight in an alternate universe where King Thanos, as he had become, had pretty much destroyed all life in existence for her. But you know, still not good enough, Thanos. You gotta earn it. You gotta destroy all life, not almost all. Number 5. Magus. Adam Warlock and Thanos have been at each other's throats for years in the comics, but with Adam Warlock being a hero, Thanos wouldn't be particularly afraid of him, I'd say. In fact, the two have also teamed up together when they've needed to, so they fought each other, but they've also worked together before, chiefly against the man they are both afraid of, Adam Warlock's evil counterpart, his evil version, Magus, who actually is like the dark side of his soul made manifest. Magus was actually created to be the champion of life, in contrast to Thanos, who is the champion of death, and as such the two have been sworn enemies since Magus's creation. He is meant to oppose Thanos, which he has attempted to do multiple times to varying success. At one point he demonstrated that he was an even match for Thanos when he got his hands on the Infinity Gauntlet, attempting to use it to bend and shape reality to his own whim. Didn't work out in the end, but hey, you know, he tried. Number 4. Dr. Doom. Well, really God Emperor Doom, but still. Thanos also wasn't really intimidated by this version of Doom, but he should have been. Doom might seem like just a Terran with a big brain and some magic tricks in comparison to Thanos being a cosmic tyrant, but Doom is not to be trifled with, especially when he wields the powers of the Beyonder. Thanos attempted to fight Doom without much fear, and Doom responded by literally obliterating him, turning him to dust and bones with one mighty punch. And you might be wondering if this was some alternate warped Thanos, but no, it wasn't really. This was Thanos of the Black Cabal, who had preserved himself along with his teammates in a life raft so they weren't altered at all during the creation of Doom's battle world in Secret Wars. Now granted, yes, Doom was augmented in terms of his power, but still, if Thanos remembered this moment, I'm sure he'd at least have a bit of fear when facing Doom in the future, because that's pretty wild. Number 3. Rot. Rot was the child of Thanos and Death that came to be after Thanos died, and in his death, he merged with the entity of death. Rot as such was not really a person or corporeal being, but more of an abstract entity made manifest. Rot's power was so great for death and destruction that Death and Thanos themselves were actually forced to confront it, using their power to rip it asunder, when nothing else seemed to be able to harm it. Number 2. The Many-Angled Ones. What is a fate worse than death for Thanos? How about a fate where life and creation win, where death is defeated so all that is left is untamed, uncontrolled, wild life? That is basically what the Cancerverse is. Although it doesn't have the most appealing name, the Cancerverse is actually known as such thanks to the fact that it came into existence after the original Captain Marvel of an alternate world made a deal with the Many-Angled Ones to rid him of his cancer, basically by defeating death. However, without death to keep it in check, life became twisted and corrupted by how rampant it was. And the Many-Angled Ones were also now able to enter that reality, corrupting it further as they were basically eldritch gods. At one point, the Cancerverse plans to take over the whole multiverse, invading various other universes and sitting on the edge of reality, threatening to bleed into other worlds. Fortunately, Thanos returns to life and ends up manipulating Captain Marvel basically into killing him in the Thanos Imperative, with Marvel making an exception to the rule that nothing can die in their universe for Thanos, because he's like, you are so annoying, you gotta go. As such, because this Thanos is actually of Earth 616, his version of death is able to appear in the Cancerverse when he dies and allows it to be defeated basically. But even though this works to get to this point, it takes a lot of courage for Thanos, who is actually afraid of joining in the fight against the Cancerverse initially due to the absence of death in that world, which makes sense. I mean, he's kinda all about death, so I'd be pretty nervous about that too. Number 1. Thane. Thane is Thanos' son, and he definitely feared him because he literally returned to Earth to try and hunt Thane down and destroy him as a result of Thane's potential power surmounting his own. He's afraid that Thane will basically rise up and overtake him and basically end up being a better Thanos, I think. But in the end, this wasn't something that Thanos had to be particularly afraid of, it turned out. Even after Thane became empowered with the Phoenix Force, Thanos still managed to defeat him. And this was also at a point when Thanos himself seemed to be dying at this time in the comics. Thane ended up being stripped of the Phoenix Force and ended up sentenced to suffering a hell-like existence in the God Quarry for the rest of his life. Or, you know, at least until some writer remembers, oh yeah, he's still down in that God Quarry, and decides to get him out of there. Thane was also an Inhuman, and his powers are actually perfect for someone who is known to be Thanos' son. He had a Death Touch ability that, while untamed, could kill anyone within a certain radius, and he could also trap people in a state of living death through encasing them in amber, which sounds actually worse than dying to me.
Coming in at number 10 today is Lord Mar-Vell. Mar-Vell of the Kree was Marvel Comics' original Captain Marvel, and he was also the first Marvel superhero to permanently pass away when he succumbed to cancer in 1982's The Death of Captain Marvel. The character had has reappeared as visions or in flashbacks and obviously in alternate realities. But the one we will focus on today is Mar-Vell of the Cancerverse. It's just a really cool and creative idea. Basically, on his infamous deathbed, the many angled ones contact and corrupt the dying Mar-Vell, granting him new powers which he used to transmute the other heroes, and with Mar-Vell as their lord, they took down the Avatar of Death itself, which in turn completely destroyed Death, allowing the many angled ones to invade their reality.
Number 9. Ultron. Ultron was created by writer Roy Thomas and artist John Buscema, and made his first appearance in Avengers issue number 54 back in 1968. He's an advanced AI with a highly intelligent and malevolent personality, initially created by Dr. Henry Pym, the original Ant-Man. As a peacekeeping robot, Ultron eventually gained sentience and became obsessed with the idea of eliminating humanity, viewing it as the root cause of conflict and suffering in the entire world. He possesses superhuman strength, an incredibly high level of intelligence, durability, and the ability to upgrade and improve himself, making him a very scary villain by my view of things. As an artificial intelligence, Ultron has the ability to control and manipulate advanced technology, and often creates armies of robotic drones called Ultron Sentries to carry out his plans, with his primary goal being to replace humanity with an entire race of robotic beings he calls Ultronics. Now, unlike many villains who have, human motivations or emotions, Ultron's cold, calculating nature, devoid of human empathy or conscience, makes him particularly chilling. Once again, he views humans as inherently flawed and disposable. Outside of just the comics, the possibility of a real-life Ultron raises existential questions about the potential dangers of creating advanced AI and the consequences of unchecked technological progress, which is something that terrifies me on a regular basis. Overall, Ultron's combination of intelligence, ruthlessness, technological prowess, and his lack of human qualities contributes to his reputation as a genuinely scary and memorable villain in the Marvel Universe.
Number 8. The Void. Similar to Lord Mar-Vell, the Void is essentially taking the strongest and brightest character and creating a villain that is a sick and twisted version of that. A large part of what makes the Sentry so much more interesting is that while he is essentially like a god-like superhero who inspired all the other heroes, he also has a dark persona called the Void. The Void went on a rampage that took the lives of around 1 million people and almost destroyed Manhattan itself, and so the Sentry made the decision, with other heroes like Reed Richards and Doctor Strange, to cause the entire world to forget about the Sentry himself. Now, in New Avengers from 2004 and 2005, the Sentry comes back to the world, and through a series of events, the Void also returns. Full rosters of the Avengers, X-Men, and the Fantastic Four all went to take on the Void, and they couldn't do a damn thing. Only the Sentry himself could really subdue the Void, and it, in classic supervillain fashion, vowed to just come back. And it totally did. In this siege event, Norman Osborn decided to attack Asgard, and he used the Sentry to do this. The problem is, the Sentry ended up unleashing the Void, and it totally obliterated Asgard completely, taking out Loki in the process. This did actually branch off into a what-if story where the Void was never stopped and destroyed every superhero on Earth, and then went off into the universe to basically do the same thing everywhere else.
Number 7. Dracula. This might be my vampire-loving bias coming into play, but I think the way Dracula is portrayed in the Marvel comics is quite scary, and that's coming from someone that's usually more enamored with him than scared by him. Hey, to each their own. So Dracula is a prominent character in the comics, and he's portrayed as, the classic vampire figure. So the classy vampire made his first appearance in Tomb of Dracula in 1972, which was created by writer Marv Wolfman and artist Gene Colan. This comic series, along with many other Marvel horror titles of the era, contributed to the resurgence of interest in horror comics. Now, he's based on the classic Bram Stoker depiction of the centuries-old vampire, cursed with immortality and supernatural powers. Like many traditional vampires, Dracula possesses superhuman strength, speed, agility, the ability to hypnotize and control the minds of his victims, transform into a bat or other creatures, and has an aversion to, the usual sunlight, garlic, crosses. He can also regenerate from most injuries, except for those inflicted by wooden stakes, through the heart, or exposure to sunlight. Dracula is often portrayed as the lord and ruler of Earth's vampires, commanding a vast army of followers and seeking to expand his dominion over both the human and vampire worlds. Now, Dracula has clashed with numerous Marvel superheroes over the years, and these confrontations often involve battles spells against his little minions as well. If that isn't scary enough for you, Dracula's curse of immortality is deeply unsettling, since, he can't be killed by any conventional means. As a vampire, Dracula feeds on the life source of the living, and his ability to hypnotize and control the minds of his victims adds quite the psychological dimension to the fear he instills. Hey, loss of free will and autonomy is a terrifying concept. One notable encounter occurred in the storyline Avengers 185 and 86, published in 1979, when Dracula targets the Avengers after becoming obsessed with the Scarlet Witch. And I can't say I blame him for falling in love with her. Granted, his attempt to make her his bride leads to quite the confrontation.
Number 6. Null. Null existed long before even the Celestials in the 6th incarnation of the multiverse, where he existed in basically nothingness. But when the Celestials created the 7th multiverse, Null was mad that he got woken up. So he created the all-black Necro Sword and beheaded a Celestial. For this insane feat of power, he was banished to another void of nothingness, where he improved on the sword and eventually broke out into the universe, taking out various gods until he lost the Necro Sword after being defeated by a mysterious god of light. Null then goes on to make more and more symbiotes. Yes, the symbiotes like Venom and Carnage, who all share a hive mind under the control of Null himself. These symbiotes, who are all terrifying in their own right, eventually rebel and imprison Null inside the symbiote homeworld, Clintar. In the 2020 King in Black story, Null escapes, again, and heads to Earth, where he faces off against literally all the heroes and even some of the villains. He's one of the strongest villains in Marvel Comics. He is immortal, super strong, instantly heals, can create an unlimited amount of symbiotes, some of which who have been incredibly powerful on their own, and he can control them all. The Silver Surfer had to use all the reserves of the power cosmic to just temporarily stop Null. Thor, using the power cosmic and the Thor Force, was no match for Null at all. Null has awoken, enslaved, and controlled Celestials and even defeated the Sentry, ripping him in half and absorbing the Void, who we just talked about. The only thing that defeated him was Eddie Brock's Venom wielding the Unipower, which is Captain Universe, the protector of the universe, and the opposite to literally everything that Null represents.
Number 5, the Apocalypse Twins. So this duo made their first appearance in issue number 5 of Uncanny Avengers, which was only published in 2013, ergo making them the most recent villains to come into the universe that I'll be discussing today. So they're mutants and the twin descendants of the big supervillain Apocalypse, so yay! Being bad comes pretty honestly to them. Okay, technically their real names are Uriel and Iman, and they were initially created by writer Rick Remender and artist Olivier Coipel, but Apocalypse Twins does sound infinitely cooler. So they were raised by Clan Akaba, a cult dedicated to their dear dad, which aimed to bring about the return of the powerful mutant leader. In terms of specific scary powers, Uriel possesses the ability to manipulate and transmute organic matter, including the power to heal and create life, while Iman has time manipulation abilities, allowing her to see into the future and alter the time stream. The duo are skilled manipulators who use their powers and charisma to sway others to their cause, just like, your everyday narcissists. So that's another little tick on the pass list from me. The twins believed that they could save mutant kind by eliminating threats to mutants and humankind alike, and had a twisted vision of a better world and sought to achieve it through drastic means. I hate sounding like a broken record, but jeepers. Look, a perfect world does not exist when created by force. In terms of, the hell they've unleashed specifically on the Avengers, they created a team of the 4 Horsemen of Death to execute their plans and clashed with the Avengers and the X-Men, leading to a major conflict known as the Ragnarok Now storyline. The storylines involving the Apocalypse Twins had lasting repercussions in the Marvel Universe, affecting relationships among mutants and superheroes. Their parentage plays obviously a very significant role in their menacing presence. As the offspring of Apocalypse, one of the most powerful and iconic villains in Marvel history, their genetic lineage implies an inherent potential for immense power and malevolence.
Number 4. Chthon. Chthon stands as one of the most powerful demons in existence in Marvel Comics, and his ancient origins make him comparable to the very archetype of evil itself. He predates even the likes of Mephisto and is often regarded as the closest embodiment of the devil and demonology in Marvel Comics. Chthon and his Ngarai once ruled over Earth until they faced an assault by the angel Lucifer, an event that occurred long before Lucifer's rebellion against heaven and his ascent to rule over hell as the devil. Chthon's influence extends extends to the very roots of dark supernatural entities, including witches, werewolves, and vampires. He holds dominion over the most potent form of magic, known as chaos magic, the same mystical force harnessed by the Scarlet Witch herself. To put this into perspective, Scarlet Witch has reshaped the whole of reality with just a fraction of Chthon's power. His counterpart, Oshter, is one of the essential components of the Vishanti, which is a triumvirate that actively opposes Chthon and supplies Doctor Strange with his power. In response to Chthon's malevolent Darkhold, they created the Book of Vishanti, a beacon of light against the Book of Darkness. Even powerful beings such as Dormammu and Mephisto invoke Chthon's name when casting their most formidable spells. Chthon's presence alone nearly corrupted and permanently incapacitated the Sorcerer Supreme, Doctor Strange. Defeating him is an arduous task, and even when achieved, it often results in his banishment back to his personal dimension, the other realm, where he's basically untouchable.
Number 3, Korvac. So Michael Korvac, commonly known as Korvac, first appeared in issue number 3 of Giant-Sized Defenders back in 1975. Created by writer Steve Gerber and artist Jim Starlin, Korvac is quite the complex character with a unique and powerful storyline. He started as an ordinary human computer technician, but underwent a transformation after encountering the Badoon, an alien race. This transformation granted him incredible powers, including, energy manipulation, telekinesis, and matter transmutation, making him pretty near godlike in terms of abilities. Yikes! Korvac possesses nearly limitless powers, including, once again, the ability to manipulate reality itself. He's also not only physically powerful, but incredibly intelligent. Driven by a desire for order and perfection, he embarked on a quest to reshape the universe according to his own vision. While his motives weren't purely evil, the way he pursued them brought him into conflict with the Avengers, ergo how he earned a spot on our list today. One of his most notable storylines, which was the Korvac saga, is a pivotal moment in Marvel Comics history, since it challenged the Avengers on multiple levels, both morally and physically, and had pretty far-reaching consequences. Once again, Korvac's godlike powers, intelligence, and the existential threats he posed to the entire universe made him a pretty memorable villain. His character is a great example of how complexity and moral ambiguity can add depth to a supervillain, making him more than just, a one-dimensional antagonist.
Number 2, Carnage. The red symbiotes always seem to be the worst of the worst, and the one that would be born from Venom himself seems to be the worst of the worst of the worst of the worst. When Eddie Brock was briefly detached from the Venom symbiote, he was imprisoned, and his cellmate was none other than Cletus Cassidy, a psychotic killer serving 11 consecutive life sentences in Rikers Island. When Venom showed up and bust Eddie out of prison, it produced its first offspring as a result of Thanos seeking the Infinity Gems out in space. I don't know how those two connect, but that's just what happened. This offspring would be Carnage, and it was left in the cell when Venom and Eddie escaped, bonding with Cletus Cassidy through a wound in his hand. Meaning, the bond they formed was on a blood level, and it would be nearly impossible to break that. Despite that, there have been other characters that have taken on the symbiote. Norman Osborn was a notable one when he became the Red Goblin and was absolutely terrifying. And then I would be silly to not mention that the Grendel Dragon symbiote had part of itself merge with Carnage to create an incredibly terrifying version of the symbiote known as Dark Carnage that absolutely put up a hell of a fight against Venom and others. Now, Carnage is back yet again, and he is reaching a level of power that puts him on the cosmic map as he is constantly upgrading himself with all kinds of tech and magic to be able to face Eddie Brock, who has become the King in Black of the symbiote race.
Number 1, Thanos. Created by writer and artist Jim Starlin, Thanos made his first appearance in Iron Man issue number 55 back in 1973. He's known for his distinctive appearance and is a towering purple-skinned alien with a heavily muscled physique and deep-set glowing eyes. Yeah, that makes sense. Thanos is obsessed with the concept of death and seeks to impress Mistress Death, a personification of death in the Marvel Universe, and visually speaking, I can't blame him for wanting to impress her. To gain her favor, he often engages in grandiose and destructive acts, including seeking to wipe out half of all life in the universe. Thanos possesses a vast array of superhuman abilities, including super strength, durability, and agility, not to mention that he's highly intelligent and a strategic mastermind. Despite being a villain, he exhibits moral complexity and genuinely believes that his actions are necessary for the greater good, even if they involve mass destruction. The level of delusion there might just be what scares me the most. Oh, and tiny thing, Thanos also poses a cosmic level threat to the entire universe, since his plans often involve consequences on a cosmic scale, making him a particularly dangerous foe. Nope.
And at 10, Earth NR. On Earth NR, Johann Schmidt is the illegitimate son of Adolf. You know the one, who trained him to be one of his best generals. However, the man known as the Red Skull was considered dangerous even to him being Adolf. So when he tried to have him assassinated, the Red Skull retaliated by killing him in 1951. Red Skull then became the leader of the fascist regime until his death in 1984 at the hands of Punished Snake. Earth NR is also certainly an interesting Earth, since Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, air quotes, is the son of Nora Kramir and Nar-Vell, Kryptonian scientists that worked alongside the parents of Superman and are referred to as Kree, which is a slang term for Kryptonian. So apparently, some of these characters are combinations of DC heroes as well as Marvel heroes, but like they're not a part of the separate amalgam universe. I don't know, that was interesting to me.
Number 9. Cynthia Sin Schmidt. Sin is the daughter of Red Skull, who for a time also adopted her father's mantle. She isn't an alternate in the way of being from an alternate reality, but she is an alternate version of the Red Skull mantle. Her mother was a nameless washerwoman whom Red Skull had really no ties to himself, but simply used in an attempt to get an heir. Disappointed when the child that they bore was born a girl. When she first rose to prominence, she greatly resembled her father's appearance, also boasting of a skeletal looking Red Skull face herself, which she actually got as a result of a fight with Bucky Barnes. During the Fear Itself story arc, she became one of the Serpent's chosen warriors, Scotty. Since then, however, her appearance has changed in the comics to the point that those who remember her from Fear Itself might not even recognize her anymore, although this was her original appearance in the sense of what she originally looked like. Cynthia now goes by the mantle of Sin and is looking much less frightening currently in comic continuity. Still, I don't think she's someone you would want to mess with, hence why she makes her cut.
And at 8, Earth 92-131. Earth 92131, also known as the Spider-Man 90s animated universe, Red Skull was obsessed with creating and controlling a doomsday weapon that he had a German scientist build for him under New York City. After numerous battles with Captain America and the 6 American warriors, he and Cap became trapped in a vortex for 50 years. After those 50 years, the Red Skull's son, Reichenwald Kragoff, freed him from the vortex, and they found the doomsday weapon and used it on Reinhold, which made him become Electro. After Electro betrayed the Red Skull, he tricked Spider-Man and Captain America into fixing the vortex in order to capture Electro. And after a battle, both Cap and the Skull were trapped in the vortex yet again. But he was later freed by the Beyonder to be a part of the Secret Wars. He recruited Alistair Smythe and Dr. Octopus to help him in his bid to conquer Battle World, and he absolutely decimated the planet. So yeah, I mean, he's a pretty bad dude. He was also returned to Earth by Dr. Doom with no memory of the events when Doom had stole the Beyonder's powers, but that means that he was free on Earth, which the animation couldn't continue to look into because it ended, unfortunately, like 3 episodes later. Anyway, he was also the adopted father of Chameleon, and then he turned his biological son into Electro, so that's some pretty serious villain juice, especially for an animated Saturday cartoon villain.
Number 7. Golden Skull. Golden Skull is from the alternate future of Earth 15061. His true identity remains unknown, although it was rumored that he was the son of another alternate Red Skull known as the Green Skull. If this is true, it's believed that he became the Golden Skull out of rebellion against his father and everything that he believed in. Golden Skull was known for being a recurring enemy and villain to Daniel Cage, the daughter of Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, and the all-grown-up alternate future version of Captain America. As his name implies, Golden Skull himself was obsessed with wealth, acting like the most capitalist version of the Red Skull. At one time, he traveled to the past, where his plan was actually to take control of the entirety of Earth's economy. Pretty big plan.
And at 6, A New Future. On Earth 71500, Johann Schmidt, also known as the Red Skull, was at some point the leader of Hydra, obviously, but after Cap reached Hydra's headquarters and destroyed it, the two fought hard and they were both knocked out and frozen by Hydra. However, Natalia Romanova, the Black Widow of this reality, is also a member of the Avengers and Hydra. Natalia fought along with the other members of the Fantastic Four and the Avengers against Nathaniel Von Doom and his army, but she was badly injured by Sabretooth and Juggernaut. She recovered from this injury at a time where the current president was resigning and a new president was needed. So she went to the secret Hydra base where both Captain America and the Red Skull were kept frozen, and she woke up Red Skull with a plan that she had managed to create when the current president resigned. And since Red Skull wanted to win the election, he disguised himself as Captain America. Yeah, you heard that right. On Earth 71500, Captain America is actually the Red Skull and started running for president under the guise of Captain America, someone that every American could trust. Yeah, I'm sure you can figure out how that turned out.
Number 5. White Skull. There have actually been a few White skulls, but for the purpose of this list, I'll be talking about Colonel Bucky Barnes from the alternate reality of Earth 717. In this reality, we learn of what would happen if Captain America had lived during the American Civil War. Bucky himself becomes a villain in this universe, being a corrupt leader of the Union Red Legs Regiment, where soldier Stephen Rogers served. While tracking down Stephen, Buck interrupts an indigenous ritual meant to heal and transform Stephen Rogers. As a result, the skin on Colonel Barnes' face was burned off, revealing his white skull underneath, which is supposed to be symbolism, I think, for the fact that he's racist. Surviving the incident, Colonel Barnes would become the White Skull, the sworn enemy of Stephen Rogers, Captain America.
In 4, Captain Skull. Imagine a Captain America but a fascist version. And not one that secretly works for Hydra, but literally one that is branded with fascist symbols and a black, white, and red color scheme instead of the classic all-American red, white, and blue. That's basically what Captain Skull is from Earth 613. This guy is literally just Captain Fascism, and that certainly seems scary to me. In fact, here's a quote from a version of Red Skull. I don't think it's this version, but it's still a quote nonetheless. "Ah, my dear Captain, now you see who is stronger of us both. It is too bad that a symbol of freedom had to perish to see it. It is also too bad that I was insincere in that sentiment." Cause like, okay, so really that could just be a quote from the normal Red Skull, but hey, it fits this version well. While not much is known about this version of the character, it's certainly something that I personally believe that we should be afraid of.
Number 3. Ultimate Red Skull. In the reality of Earth 1610, known as the Ultimate Universe, Red Skull is actually the son of Captain America, Stephen Rogers, and his then girlfriend Gail Richards. While Captain America went MIA and was later declared dead, Gail was encouraged by the military to give up their baby and would end up marrying Stephen's best friend Bucky, after Stephen went missing, obviously. Gail and Stephen's child would be raised by the government and the military, who planned to have him become the new Captain America eventually. Unfortunately, it turns out that raising a baby in a military base to become his long-gone heroic father maybe isn't such a great idea. At the age of 17, the young man escaped and rebelled against his father's image, took a knife and cut the skin from his face, becoming the brilliant and evil villain known as the Red Skull. The really tragic thing is that Red Skull, while acquiring the Cosmic Cube and being captured before he could use it in this reality, revealed that the only reason that he'd wanted it to begin with was so that he could turn back time and prevent his father from being lost in the war, allowing him to grow up with a family and have a chance at a normal life with both his parents present. Not only is Red Skull of the Ultimate Universe terrifying, but he's also quite tragic as well.
Penultimately, in at number 2, Green Skull. Green Skull, aka Lex Luthor, is the amalgam of Marvel Comics Red Skull and DC Comics Lex Luthor. I mean, like, I'm guessing you could probably figure that based on his name and the title of this list. In the 1940s, Lex Luthor is a renowned entrepreneur and philanthropist who resides in Metropolis. He was married to Lois Lane, a war correspondent whom he met at a charity ball. Widely considered to be a model citizen and contributor to society, Luthor is also personal friends with high-ranking political figures such as Winston Churchill and President Franklin Roosevelt. Only Super Soldier, a World War II era superhero created by the US government, sees through his facade and knows that Luthor is actually a corrupt war profiteer who is aiding the fascist party in an effort to prolong the war. While looking into the secret government project that created Super Soldier, Luthor learns of an alien craft that landed in Kansas and carried a radioactive ore known as Green K, or the Kansas Load. I guess you can see where this is going. It's fucking kryptonite. In 1938, he arranged for fascist scientists to steal the ship and its cargo for him. Observing that the green meteorite weakens Super Soldier, Luthor creates a serum from it, which he then promptly injects himself with. The result greatly extends his own lifespan, but inadvertently turns him into the Green Skull. So in essence, he tried to make himself walking kryptonite and got boned because of it. No pun intended, because you know, he's the skull. Skull is a bone. He got boned.
Number 1. Red Onslaught. Red Onslaught might seem like he's part of the main continuity for the character, and well, I mean, he sort of is. But even he is not the original Red Skull, as the original Johann Schmidt died long ago. Instead, Red Onslaught was actually born out of a clone version of the original Red Skull. So many clones, so little time. So even before he became Red Onslaught, he was technically an alternate version of sorts. This clone of Red Skull would go on to steal Professor X's brain after he was killed by Cyclops in Avengers vs. X-Men. This would begin his journey towards becoming Red Onslaught, where Red Skull would then become merged with Onslaught via Professor X's brain. This basically all came about because Red Skull turned Genosha into a place where he enslaved and abducted both Inhumans and mutants. This obviously provoked Magneto, who attempted to kill Red Skull, but instead awoke a more powerful persona residing within him, Onslaught, thereby creating Red Onslaught. In order to defeat this devastating and deadly form, Scarlet Witch then cast a spell attempting to reverse the alignment of Red Onslaught, which worked, but kinda accidentally resulted in the Axis event, where various heroes and villains had their alignments flipped. So, you know, solve one problem, create a bunch more. It's kinda how Wanda does, unfortunately.
And at 10, Earth X. We already know that Ultron is a powerful villain, and the fact that he can basically infinitely resurrect himself because, you know, he's a robot is already damn horrifying. Now imagine the Absorbing Man, who uses his absorption abilities to become Ultron, taking the intelligence and processing power of an AI hellbent on destruction, and then using it to become the Avengers' ultimate foe. Well, that's what happened to Ultron on Earth X, also known as Earth 9997. Absorbing Man claimed Ultron's powers, which I wouldn't even think was possible since he doesn't have powers and is instead a robot with AI, but he does it and somehow also gains his processing power, which is already terrifying for a robot, but like, a human with that kind of functionality is absolutely monstrous, but nothing compared to what's coming. And at 9, Earth 10071. On Earth 10071, this version of Ultron isn't known as Ultron 9 or anything like that. Instead, this version is simply Ultron, because at this point he's risen to the peak of his powers and subjugated the human race, which obviously fought back, but after destroying all of the human resistance, Ultron reigns supreme over the Earth, because of course he did. He was confronted by Kang the Conqueror though, who relished in the challenge of confronting the most powerful Ultron in recorded history. But Kang failed to defeat Ultron, and returned time and time again with new allies to overwhelm the robot overlord. Kang's repeated abuse of the time stream actually ended up causing it to fracture altogether, threatening reality as we know it. A version of Ultron who can beat up Kang the Conqueror multiple times, even when he brings allies, dude, that's nothing to mess with. Like, that's one of the most terrifying concepts I've heard, and not to mention what this guy looks like. He's an absolute beast! This man does not miss out on the gains. He has spikes going across every appendage on his body. It's f***ing nuts! And at 8, Ultron 1320. Ultron 1320 comes from Earth 14622 and What If Age of Ultron number 1, an Earth where, thanks to the Wasp dying, Ultron is able to take over the world even faster. Ultron was created to be the ultimate AI by Hank Pym to help the Avengers utilize their function better as a team, but with the untimely death of Pym's wife, Pym went on to create a more brutal version of Ultron, which was to replace the Avengers. But with this, Ultron's sentience began to constantly evolve. He started the eradication of the human race early by taking out such threats as the Avengers and the Defenders, while he left Pym alive so that he would have to watch and suffer. Ultron and his army of Ultron Sentinels then moved to Kola, Russia, so he could bore himself into the planet's core to create the ultimate version of himself, Ultron 1320. Ultron then has his minions batter and beat Pym unconscious until he wakes up just to find himself as he's been turned into Ultron 1321. Great. This version also invaded other worlds, claiming Earths 62412, 23223, and 81223, but was stopped on Earth 45162. Thank God. And at 7, Lord Ultron. Upon first being constructed, Ultron 1 destroyed his creator, Henry Pym. After the death of the Avengers, though, Ultron was able to destroy the remaining superheroes and bring about his rule. When Dr. Doom created his battle world, Earth 21261 became perfection with Ultron as its ruler, appearing in Age of Ultron vs. Marvel Zombies number 1 from 2015. After spending time on Battleworld in constant battle with the zombies of the Deadlands, Ultron determined that the best way to take over Battleworld and defeat his creations was to form an alliance with the zombies, and was able to reach an agreement with Magneto, which resulted in Ultron successfully merging undead flesh and technology and made a whole army of undead drone versions of himself and launched an attack on Salvation, a refuge founded by Wonder Man, Human Torch, and Vision, who Ultron had actually created himself. Bro, I don't want to deal with either zombies or Ultron, but having to deal with both of them? No thank you. And at 6, MCU. The MCU Ultron is probably the most popular or most well-known version there is, just based on how many people watch the movies over reading the comics. However, the MCU Ultron is still pretty damn scary, being probably the most effective enemy in the entire MCU based on how his actions affected the world of the MCU permanently. Without Ultron, there would have been no Civil War, no Sokovia Accords, Zemo wouldn't have lost his family, resulting in him not being able to help in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Hell, even Thanos would have lost, since the Russo brothers went on record to say that the reason the Avengers lost in Infinity War was because Iron Man and Cap weren't fighting together, which was caused thanks to the actions of Ultron. So I guess you could also say that there would be no Ultron without Thanos, but Ultron could have been created another way. Ultron wasn't reliant on Thanos, but a load of other things were reliant on Ultron, which makes him the most successful villain in the MCU. Halfway through into number 5, Ultron 8. Ultron 8 was debuted in Avengers Volume 1, number 162 from 1977, and it also started a very Frankenstein-esque robot love story known as the Bride of Ultron saga. Ultron 8 created a mate named Jocasta, and in order to create a more advanced AI to give to this robot and give it, sentience, Ultron brainwashed his own maker into transferring the mind of his wife, Janet Van Dyne, the Wasp, into Jocasta's shell. The Wasp in Jocasta's body alerted her teammates, the Avengers, who then defeated Ultron and reversed the process, leaving just the robot a mindless husk. Ultron, though, was later able to revive Jocasta with a remote link, activating the mental residue that was left behind by the Wasp. But this time she was programmed to be loyal to Ultron, but eventually betrayed him, choosing to help the Avengers defeat him instead. That sucks, dude, trust me. I know what it's like to have someone you love, and you thought loved you back, totally screw you. But they didn't really defeat me, they just beat me down emotionally. Afterwards, Jocasta adventured with the Avengers for a brief time, but never really felt accepted, and then left them before she, unbeknownst to her, was about to be made an official member. So, rip. In at 4, Gold Ultron. Years ago, Hank Pym was approached by the Wolverine of an alternate universe, where Ultron had launched a massive and sudden attack on New York City and the rest of the world, quickly taking over the whole planet and annihilating humankind. And this Wolverine wanted to kill Pym in order to prevent this future from happening. This dystopian future follows the footsteps of stories like Age of Apocalypse, since this is Age of Ultron after all. However, this killing of Hank Pym created a timeline where Earth was constantly being threatened by Morgana Le Fay, and the heroes were struggling to survive. So Pym was allowed to live, but he was tasked to create a hidden failsafe program to destroy Ultron if they ever ended up needing it. Which is good because in the present day, a strange object crashes onto Earth, which turns out to be Ultron, who had returned. Because, of course he did. Being defeated by this failsafe program once and for all though, or so they thought. This is also in the main Earth 616 continuity, but there's also the Earth 6112 Earth where Ultron actually wins, and that's the separate Age of Ultron thing. There's enough Age of Ultrons where it kind of gets confusing. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, Ultron Phalanx. At the end of the Ultron Initiative storyline, Ares used a computer virus to wipe Ultron's programming from a set of Iron Man armor that had Tony inside, and they thought that this was the end of it. However, this was not the end of Ultron, for his disembodied consciousness was drawn to a Babel spire on a world conquered by the Phalanx. Instead of being assimilated though, Ultron took control of the Phalanx through sheer force of will, bending them to his dominion. In turn, they viewed Ultron as the sympathetic father that they had begged for, so Ultron became the ruler of the Phalanx. Yeah, the homicidal, sadistic, killing machine robot thing was transformed into the ruler of a techno-organic species of alien. That's nothing to be concerned about in the slightest, right? Why would we ever need to be worried about that? That doesn't really seem like a terrifying and universe-ending combination. Well, actually, it wasn't, since Ultron was able to be defeated eventually, but that has gotta be the scariest version of Ultron from Earth 616, hands down. Penultimately, in at number 2, All-Father Ultron. In the year 2040 on Earth 14831, a new strain of Ultron appeared, the Ultimate Ultron. He easily destroyed the Avengers, ruthlessly crushed any resistance, and built factories supplying endless drones to expand his empire. He also enslaved most of humanity, and then created his own AI Avengers, successfully extending his reach to the entirety of the solar system. And at some point he had also imprisoned all of Asgardians with the help of Loki, and then had taken the power of Odin for himself. So in turn, this guy has all the powers of Ultron in addition to all the powers of Odin. It took 3 Thors, one with 2 hammers, 2 Mjolnirs to take him down, and they couldn't even kill him. They just had to like banish him from the world. They had to like straight up Alduin Elder Scroll this guy out of existence, but probably only sent him forward in time instead. This guy is an absolute beast. Finally, and at number 1, Ultron 1. This is probably the most insanely overpowered version of Ultron we've seen so far, and it's coming from the MCU no less. Oh, and spoiler alert for those of you who aren't caught up on the Disney Plus What If series. The history of Earth TRN 906 was the same as the MCU, until Ultron was able to secure what would have been Vision's body for himself. Ultron managed to download his consciousness into the synthetic body that he had created, thus killing the Avengers and decimating life on Earth. After killing Thanos and taking the Infinity Stones for himself, Ultron remakes the universe in his image. He decimated the Earth, absolutely wrecking everyone in it, even killing Captain Marvel, Hulk, Thor, and eventually discovering the Watcher and the multiverse. This version of Ultron literally sliced Thanos in half with the Mind Stone. He comes out of the portal like he does in the movies, like, and then Ultron's just like, interesting, zip, and he falls in half, which reveals the biggest mistake that the MCU made was destroying the Mind Stone in Infinity War. But after gaining all the Infinity Stones, he goes shot for shot with the Watcher, a literal cosmic entity that realistically shouldn't really have a true corporeal form. Holy damn, this is overpowered to the max. I know I'm swearing a lot, but watch this episode. This man is sending the Watcher through realities. It's like grabbing him and flying him through walls, but the walls are dimensions.
Number 10, first appearance. While Gorr the God Butcher is mentioned in Thor God of Thunder issue number 1, the character actually makes their first appearance in the following issue, issue number 2. Gorr was created by Asad Rabish and Jason Aaron, and is introduced to us as a literal butcher and destroyer of gods. Really, in issue 1, we are introduced to Gorr by not just name, but by his handiwork, as Thor comes across dead gods of a world that claims they no longer have any to answer their prayers. It turns out that this is not because the gods have forsaken them, but because their gods are literally dead, killed by Gorr. In issue number 2, we see Gorr pursue Thor, hoping to find other gods and following him. The two face off in the clouds, having a bloody fight where Gorr promises to butcher Thor, as he has done to many gods before. Fortunately, he does not succeed, and Thor manages to escape, despite being pretty badly beaten by Gorr. However, this issue would set the precedent for the kind of fights you expect to see Gorr get into. If y'all thought Hela was bad, just wait till you meet Gorr. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more lists centered around Love and Thunder, which I'm sure is going to have lots of cool stuff in it, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 9, Forsaken. Speaking of potentially being forsaken by your gods, that is exactly what happened to Gorr and his people, which was why he became a god butcher in the first place. After losing his entire family due to natural disasters and starvation, Gorr rebuked the gods, deciding he did not believe in them. As a result, he was ostracized from his people for his lack of belief. It was then that he stumbled upon two gods in a battle between one another and learned that they did actually exist. They simply didn't seem to care. Furious at this revelation, Gorr ended up killing both gods, or at least that's what it seemed like, and then began to wonder if there were any others out in the cosmos, deciding he would look and see and kill all gods that he found in revenge for all he had lost due to their inaction. Number 8, the all-black Necro Sword. How does Gorr manage to defeat so many gods? Well, this is largely thanks to his bond with the all-black, or the Necro Sword, or the all-black Necro Sword, or the God Slayer. It's got a lot of names. This weapon is actually the first symbiote as well. It is all powerful and lends to Gorr the strength he needs in order to face off with and defeat the gods. And what's more, Gorr doesn't just use the all black as a weapon, but he also bonds with it, becoming one with the symbiote and essentially through it gaining a sense of immortality for as long as a small piece of the all black remains. Gorr's consciousness too kind of lives on within it, meaning that from the all black he can live on and essentially reform in a way. Number 7, Null the King in Black. and also known as the god of symbiotes. Gorr and Null kind of have a history, albeit a quite brief history. In case you were wondering where the All Black came from as a symbiote, it did come from Null himself. Null had set out on a mission to destroy all those that represented light in the universe, seeking to destroy in essence all of the good gods. He created his firstborn, the All Black, which was a powerful weapon that he used in battle to carry out his mission. However, he ended up falling during this time. As Null lay temporarily defeated, Gorr came upon him and took the All Black for himself. The golden god that Null fought begged Gorr for help, which Gorr ignored as he felt he'd been ignored, instead choosing to kill the god in response. He probably thought the dark god Null was also dead as well, but of course we know that Null didn't die there and instead lived on for a long time thereafter. Number 6. An ancient evil. Not only does Gorr have the All Black, which is considered to be an ancient embodiment of evil itself, but he too is also an ancient villain. Gorr might be newer when it comes to Marvel Comics history, but within the lore of the world, he has been alive for thousands of years and spent millennia hunting down and murdering gods, which means at this point he's pretty much an expert when it comes to his capabilities and his skill set. That will also likely be Gorr's story previous to when we meet him in the MCU, meaning he'll be a devastating foe for both Thor Odinson and Jane Foster's mighty Thor to go up against. Number 5. A familiar foe. It should also be noted that because Gorr the God Butcher has been around for so long, he isn't just some random villain that Thor comes across. Despite him not making his first comic book appearance until 2012, he and Thor go way back when it comes to their history with one another. In fact, when Thor first comes across the dead gods in issue number 1 of Thor God of Thunder, he doesn't ponder on who is behind it. He actually recognizes Gorr's handiwork and suspects him first and foremost. So despite the fact that he didn't exist in comics until 2012, when it comes to his backstory, the God of Thunder and Gorr still have had a history. In fact, historically, the first version of Thor that Gorr was familiar with was one from way back around 800 AD, a much younger Thor than the present day version that we're familiar with in the main continuity currently. Hence why we follow this version of Thor along with a present and a future version of the character, with their stories interwoven between each other in the Thor God of Thunder series, because, you know, we gotta explain the story of Gorr. Despite the year of release being 2012 onward, Gorr was also being retconned into Thor's history in this narrative. So it is possible in the film Love and Thunder, Thor will also be familiar with Gorr, and the two may already have had a history in the MCU that simply hasn't been touched on yet. Number 4. The Butcher in God Butcher. While there are times that you might feel sympathetic towards Gorr, especially considering his tragic origins, and at times his desire to kind of bring people together by killing gods and dismantling beliefs that may otherwise separate them, he is still very much a dark and murderous figure. He doesn't just kill gods, he straight up does butcher them, hence his title. He earned that title. For Gorr, he doesn't just want the gods gone, he wants them to feel pain similar to what he himself suffered, and he genuinely seems to enjoy tormenting and toying with gods because of this. You won't just see him make quick work of many gods he comes across, and if he does happen to make quick work of an enemy, it's still likely going to be brutal and bloody, which is what Gorr is pretty much known for in the comics. Number 3. Cruelty. The other crazy thing about Gorr is just how cruel he can be. You would think after all he's lived through, he might be inclined to, you know, show like a modicum of mercy to those he has captured and not yet killed. After all, that's likely what a younger Gorr would have hoped for, mercy and kindness from his own gods. And yet Gorr was made hard instead by his experience, turning him somewhat into a hypocrite. Despite the fact that he cursed the injustice and cruelty of his gods, this is what he gives back to all those he comes across that oppose him, blinded by his pain and his rage. When Gorr captures Volstagg and makes him work for hundreds of years in his mines without feeding him anything, Gorr whips the god after he stole a loaf of bread. Volstagg reveals that he was starving, admitting that after hundreds of years, even a god needs to eat some amount of food and must give in to hunger. But Gorr only sees this as theft and greed. That is how blinded by rage he has become at this point, and that is how heartless Gorr is. He has no sympathy for any god, and like no matter the circumstance. He's like, are you a god? I don't care. I'm gonna treat you terribly. That's it. And then you're gonna die brutally. Number 2, Gore the God. Speaking of the cruelty that Gore showed Volstagg, his mistreatment of the Asgardian only got worse once Volstagg pointed out that even if Gore managed to wipe out all of the gods, as impossible as that would be, he would never truly finish his mission. Why? Because Gore himself had become an immortal god. He raised worlds, killed and did as he pleased, made others serve him, and in a way, kind of made others worship him. He was indestructible, undefeatable, and inevitable, all adjectives that you associate with godlike beings. According to Volstagg, Gore had become the very thing that he claimed he hated. Needless to say, this was not a reflection that Gore chose to subscribe to, and he was not very pleased that Volstagg had implied this about him. Still, I think Volstagg definitely was making sense with this observation, which is probably why it made Gore so angry, because deep down, he knew that it was at least partially true. Number 1, Agar. Agar was the last member of Gore's family to die before he found the Necro Sword and became a killer of gods. After the death of his mother when he was only a child, the death of his pregnant wife later in life, and all of their other children, his son Agar was the only one left. When Agar died of starvation, that was the final straw for Gore, who lost all faith in the gods completely, as a result of his guilt, his pain, and his inability to accept the loss of Agar. Gore created an alternate version of his son, instinctively using the All Black to do so. This construct, it turns out, also represented the hatred that Gore felt towards what he had become. Yeah, he pretty much knew he'd become a god, he was just in denial. Ultimately, this construct of Agar therefore teamed up with Thor to help him in defeating his father, Gore, in the end revealing that he was truly no more than the symbiotic weapon that Gore had carried with him for years, as Agar faded away.
Number 10. Dormammu. Dormammu made his debut in Doctor Strange. He's the ruler of the Dark Dimension. He's a very powerful being that wants to destroy worlds and merge them with the Dark Dimension to rule over them. He aligned with Scariest to help merge the Dark Dimension with Earth and take out the masters of the mystic arts. Doctor Strange, however, was able to travel to the Dark Dimension, use the Eye of Agamotto to trap Dormammu in an infinite loop. Dormammu, I am here to bargain. It was only then Dormammu agreed to leave Earth and take Scariest with him and end this infinite loop. Number 9. Ego. Ego was introduced in the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 as Star-Lord's long-lost dad. He shows up after saving the Guardians from the Sovereign. The Guardians crash land on a planet and Ego shows up to connect with his son Peter Quill. He invites Star-Lord, Gamora, Drax to his planet. Yes, his very own planet. Once there, it slowly starts being revealed that Ego's true plan. He is a Celestial that was able to create this planet and is basically able to control it to his will. The Guardians find out that Ego was basically jumping from planet to planet, having kids, trying to find the right match to help him with his diabolical plan of reshaping the universe. Man, dark much? After revealing he killed Star-Lord's mother, they battle out and actually end up blowing up the planet, killing Ego and all of his crazy plans. Number 8. Ultron. So, Ultron was basically Tony Stark's creation to help protect Earth. The Ultron program was placed in kind of like an Iron Man-like body to help fight any threat that Earth could face. But it ends up turning into something much, much worse. An AI that sees humanity as a threat. So, seeing as he wants to wipe out the human race, he wants to do it with basically a giant meteor. Yes, a meteor. Using vibranium and Tritari technology, he begins lifting a city in Sokovia to use this for his plan. Luckily, the Avengers foil this plan and defeat Ultron for good. Well, hopefully for good. Who knows if he's truly dead since he's, AI. He could come back, maybe he has a backup somewhere. Number 7. Vulture. Vulture was introduced in Spider-Man Homecoming, being part of the cleanup crew after the battle for New York. He was able to acquire some Tritari technology that would later help him create some pretty badass suits and weapons. Vulture and his crew are selling some of this weaponry illegally to gain some cash. Once Spider-Man gets knowledge of what the Vulture is and what he's doing, he obviously intervenes and tries to take him down. But things get even more complicated when it turns out Peter Parker is going to the homecoming dance with, drumroll please, Vulture's daughter. Yep, man, that was a big shock. Oh, that was such an amazing scene, too, in that whole thing when Vulture figures out Peter's Spider-Man. Oh, God, it's so good. Vulture tells him not to interfere in this plan, which is to steal Stark's cargo plane filled with tons of technology as, so they could sell it. But Spider-Man gets involved and takes on the Vulture. Number Number 6, the Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier, aka Bucky, was on a mission with Captain America and the Howling Commandos, and it didn't really go as planned. He fell off a train into the icy unknown. He was later captured by Hydra and experimented on. He lost his arm and had a new metal one as a replacement. He was given enhanced abilities and basically did whatever Hydra wanted. Add in one of the coolest character soundtracks in the MCU, like geez, it's so creepy whenever the Winter Soldier showed up, and a pretty scary mask, and you have a really scary dude, who is able to also take on Cap in a fight, which was one of the coolest sequences in MCU history. Number 5, Alexander Pierce. Alexander Pierce is truly one of the MCU's scary villains. He controlled S.H.I.E.L.D. as the head of it, but really, he was part of Hydra all along. This was one of the biggest twists that the MCU ever introduced. Hydra agents being undercover inside of S.H.I.E.L.D. for years and not being wiped out as we originally thought. I mean, it was crazy. They were able to use the Winter Soldier for their evil plans to take out threats. Their main project, Project Insight, consisted of 3 massive helicarriers that would set their weapons on who they deemed threats around the world and just take them out. That is literally how powerful this weapon is. Luckily, Captain America, Falcon, Black Widow, and the team were able to destroy these weapons. And yeah, Nick Fury killed Alexander Pierce. An eye for an eye, right? See what I did there? Because you know Nick Fury with his eye. Okay, I'll stop now. Number 4, Killmonger. Former King of Wakanda, King T'Chaka, killed his brother because he helped steal vibranium from Wakanda. The king then left, leaving his brother's son, Eric Killmonger, all alone. Killmonger then grew up training and hating Wakanda. He then teamed up with villain Claw, who he also ended up killing. He eventually got to Wakanda, and he wanted to steal the throne. He had a massive battle with T'Challa, almost killing him, and he became the new king of Wakanda. He then wanted to sell and weaponize Wakanda's vibranium to show the world how strong Wakanda really is. But eventually he was defeated by T'Challa when he returned, and he was eventually killed, which seems to be a trend here. Number 3, Loki. Loki has been around since phase 1 of the MCU. He was the main villain in the first Thor movie. He basically wants to rule Asgard, so he aligns himself with the Frost Giants to invade Asgard and take out Odin and become the ruler. Odin gets put into the Odin sleep, and Loki takes control of Asgard, since Thor was banished. It's then revealed to him that he is actually a Frost Giant. Yeah, I mean, that'd be a big shock to anyone. Alas, he cannot hold control of Asgard and is defeated by Thor once he returns. Loki then returns to rule over Earth in the Avengers, teaming up with the Chitauri and invading New York. In a massive battle, Tony is able to send a missile into space, blowing up the Chitauri headquarters, which defeats the army. Loki then is encountered by the Hulk, who takes care of him in a very satisfying way. He's then brought back to Asgard as a prisoner. Then, we're not done yet, folks. In Thor the Dark World, he is helping Thor on a journey to defeat the Dark Elves. He then appears to die. He actually only made it look like he died so that he could infiltrate Asgard as a guard, then banish Odin out of Asgard to Earth. He then rules Asgard as Odin, but Thor sees right through that and stops him in his tracks. He does end up teaming up with Thor again, and he kinda does die as a hero. But after Avengers Endgame, he did disappear somewhere into the past. And we are getting the Loki Disney Plus series, so we have definitely not seen the last of Loki. Number 2, Hela. Hela is truly one of the most powerful and badass villains in the MCU. She literally destroyed Thor's hammer with her bare hand. Hela is the goddess of death. She is revealed to be Odin's daughter, but upon his death, she is freed from the hold he had on her and escapes. After she attacks Thor and Loki, causing them to end up on another planet, she returns to Asgard to be its rightful ruler. It's revealed that Odin tried to hide the true past of Asgard to his people of how Odin and Hela actually conquered the 9 realms in battles. By continuing to grow stronger and stronger, by gaining more powers, by being in Asgard, she was able to take out the army and rule. She would have been successful in her rule, but after Thor and Loki returned with the help of Hulk and Valkyrie, they were then able to release Surtur and destroy Asgard and cause Ragnarok, along with Hela. Yes, she is one powerful villain. Number 1, Thanos. Is anyone really surprised that Thanos is number 1? I don't think so. Thanos has been hinted as the big bad all the way back when he first showed up in the mid-credit scene for the Avengers back in 2012. After that, he's been popping up in other movies, trying to find those damn Infinity Stones. His biggest debut was in Infinity War. He takes down what's left of the Asgardian ships, kills Loki, Heimdall, and other Asgardians, just to gain another Infinity Stone, and that is literally in the first 15 minutes of the movie. Like, I mean, this guy even kills his own daughter. just to get the Soul Stone. By the end of Infinity War, he has all of the Infinity Stones, snaps his fingers, wiping out half of all life across the universe. After accomplishing his goal, and being quite weak after the first snap, as well as the second snap that destroyed the stones, he moves to a farm to live out the remainder of his years. But the Avengers find him, Thor chops off his head, but that's not the end of Thanos. This leads him to come from the past to the present. Now, knowing what the Avengers are doing, he wants to wipe out the entire universe, with no chance of anyone changing what he does. In the end, Iron Man creates his own gauntlet that can harness the stone's powers, and he wipes out Thanos and all of his armies. Yep, it's a pretty epic movie.
Number 10, Styx. Starting off the list today with a pretty terrifying mutant. Jacob Akron was once a homeless man who was approached on the street by a medical researcher to participate in an experiment involving some new pharmaceuticals, and he obviously accepted because the pay was good and there were very few risks. It was revealed that during the trial, the researcher had actually lied about what he was looking into. The trial was about exploring whether the human body could develop an immunity to cancer, so Jacob was injected with a mutated cancer compound. Alongside developing an immunity to the disease, he also became a living cancer cell with the ability to kill organic matter just by touching it. However, his mind was also tainted and he took up the name Styx after the river Styx. Jacob quickly developed an affinity for death, finding it was the only thing that could bring him happiness, and alongside Gerald Stone, the two made a deadly mercenary duo. Now, I highly doubt that Marvel will ever consider bringing this baddie into the MCU because his origins are way too dark for good old Disney, plus he is a ruthless killer who does it for nothing more than just pleasure. So, for now, check him out in comic book form in his first appearance in 1988's Amazing Spider-Man number 309. Number 9, Bullseye. Known as the Mercenary of Mystery, Lester, insert name last year, might not have any powers, but that by no means makes him any less terrifying. Lester has always been a master marksman, and before his mercenary career, he tried his hand at Major League Baseball, but quickly grew bored with it because he was constantly pitching perfect games. However, he quickly found his true calling as a special operative of the United States National Security Agency. Not long after, he became a freelance merc because he found too much joy in killing his targets with his signature killing method: throwing things. Gaining a reputation in New York City, Bullseye was hired to take down Matt Murdock, but ultimately failed every time as he was stopped by, Daredevil. Later on, we see him go up against the likes of the Punisher and Spider-Man and walk away to tell the tale, which is quite the feat for someone with no powers. The worst thing this villain ever did, in my opinion at least, was kill not one, but two of Daredevil's girlfriends, Elektra and Karen Page. This led to his demise at the hands of Daredevil, of course, because I can't imagine anyone who wouldn't want revenge after that. I doubt we'll ever see Bullseye in the MCU because 1, we already have a master marksman in the form of Hawkeye, and 2, his methods of torture and his sadistic nature are utterly terrifying, and putting that on the big screen would be too much in my opinion. Check out this character for yourself and let me know what you think, starting with his first appearance in 1976's Daredevil number 131. Number 8, Blackheart. A slightly lesser known villain and utterly terrifying son of the demon Mephisto. Usually depicted as an enemy of Ghost Rider, this all-powerful demon is one of the most powerful in the Marvel Universe and possesses a vast array of magical powers, including telekinesis, telepathy, the ability to travel dimensions, and of course, the ability to project energy blasts out of his hands. Under his father's tutelage, Blackheart explored and learned everything about being evil in nature and has attempted to corrupt many of our favorite heroes, such as Ghost Rider, Spider-Man, and Wolverine. Blackheart is the leader of the Spirits of Vengeance, a group that was created to oppose the Ghost Rider, and with their help he caused some serious damage in the Marvel Universe. Skip ahead a bit and we see Blackheart with some newly acquired demonic powers attempting to take over the Earth by himself. Thankfully, this was stopped by the Avengers and Spider-Man, but not before he could rip out the Falcon's soul and send it to hell. I feel Blackheart is way too scary for the MCU because not only is he the son of Mephisto, a demon so powerful we've only ever heard of him in the MCU, he is the embodiment of evil itself with so many powers making him a ginormous threat. Imagine him getting introduced alongside Mephisto. I mean, any fight against the two would be over in the blink of an eye. Give Blackheart's origin a read for yourself, starting with 1989's Daredevil number 270, and let me know if you think he could ever make it on the big screen one day in the comments below. Number 7, Galactus. Another villain that has been off limits to the MCU for quite some time thanks to his ties to the Fantastic Four, which has made so many fans around the world fear they would never see him on the big screen. Galactus is the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. Originally, Galactus was a humanoid named Galan, born in the previous incarnation of Earth 616 on the planet Ta, a paradise-like world whose civilization is said to have been the most advanced of any known universes at the time. However, the 6th Infinity and all its universes were in their final stages of collapse due to the multiversal renewal cycle, being consumed by the abstract entity known as the Black Winter. Fast forward a bit to him becoming a cosmic entity. Galactus possesses almost limitless cosmic power that gives him a vast array of powers that would take me
forever to list off for you guys. It is actually ridiculous. With his insatiable hunger for energy and his heralds of Galactus by his side, the almighty being is an almost unstoppable force capable of pretty much anything. Like, seriously, he's not called the Devourer of Worlds and the God of Oblivion for nothing. Do I really need to explain why Galactus probably won't appear in the MCU? I mean, at least anytime soon. The dude eats planets, and as it stands right now, there aren't many heroes in the MCU that can help take down such a big threat. It would be super cool, and I would honestly freak if I ever saw him in a movie one day, but it is so unlikely right now just due to his sheer power and presence. Check out Galactus for yourself in his first appearance in 1966's Fantastic Four number 48. Number 6. Mojo. Just looking at this guy gives me shivers up and down my spine. Mojo is a part of an alien race from a planet known as Mojo World that resides in a pocket dimension known as the Mojoverse. He is a powerful sorcerer whose full power is unknown, and outside of his homeworld of Mojo World, Mojo possesses the ability to create anti-life energy fields that kills any natural organism. He can project concussive blasts, and he can even increase his own power through television ratings. Mojo has been seen manipulating so many characters in the Marvel Comics, including Rachel Summers, who he got to work for him for a while, but once she broke free, he took matters into his own hands and decided to create his own versions of the X-Men to serve under him, and thus the X-Babies were born. Fast forward past a ton of attempts to get his ratings up so he could increase his power, we see a desperate Mojo launch an all-out attack on New York City that separated the X-Men and sent them into intricate recreations of key periods in their lives. Now, I doubt Mojo will make it to the big screen anytime soon because, well, I mean, look at him, I can only imagine how grotesque he would look, but also because of his methods. Mojo is so self-absorbed and wants nothing more than to be powerful and liked, which for him kind of go hand in hand. So he'll do anything and everything and get rid of anyone who stands in his way. Check out Mojo for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1985's Longshot number 3, and see if you agree with why I doubt we'll ever see him in the MCU. Number 5. Dracula. A lot of you are probably looking at your screen right now like, Jack, are you sure you know what you're talking about? Dracula has played a pretty decent role in a lot of Batman stories, but this is Marvel. Well, you might be surprised to find out that Dracula has been a pretty prominent figure in the Marvel Universe for quite some time. Like most iterations, Vlad Dracula is the supreme ruler and the world's most powerful vampire. Driven by lust for power, companionship, and blood, his centuries of undead existence have brought him into a conflict with vampire hunters, other immortals, and, more recently, superpowered heroes. Born in 1430, Dracula didn't become the vampiric overlord until 1459, after he was beaten in battle by the Turkish warlord Tarak, and was taken to Egypt to be healed. However, it was revealed that he actually turned into a vampire. With newfound vampire powers such as superhuman strength, speed, and agility, a regenerative healing factor, hypnotism, and weather manipulation, Dracula wreaked havoc for centuries with few that could oppose him. Fast forward many years to modern times, and we see Dracula go up against the likes of Blade, Johnny Storm, Mephisto, Thor, and even tried twice to make Storm a vampire so she could become his bride. I can't imagine that Disney will ever give the green light for this character because a blood-sucking, all-powerful vampiric villain doesn't really fit with Disney's style. Not to mention that they don't really like to make R-rated movies, and that is the only way this character would work. Appearing for the first time all the way back in 1951 Suspense number 7, why not familiarize yourself with Dracula just a bit more? Number 4. Shadow King. Had to include the Shadow King on this list because he wasn't on the last one and he is too good, or I guess bad, to leave out. He is allegedly a multiversal manifestation of the dark side of the human consciousness that came to be after the first ever nightmare. Operating through Amal Farouk, who acts as his human vessel, the Shadow King is stated to be a true Omega telepath, making him the most powerful telepath on Earth besides Charles Xavier, as he has been shown to overtake some of the most strong-willed characters like Black Panther and Genta without them even being aware of it. Shadow King was actually the one responsible for the Psy War, when he tricked Psylocke into causing a massive wave of energy that destructed psionic powers across the world. However, he ended up stretching himself a little bit too thin, attempting to link with all the minds on Earth, and was defeated by Psylocke in her new Shadow astral form. This wasn't actually the end for him though, as he was around well after Charles Xavier's death. He even possessed his body for a while. Shadow King has appeared over many Earths in the Marvel Universe, taking a different evil form each time, such as on Earth 6141, where he merged with Professor X, becoming Shadow X, or on Earth 1298, where he also took over Charles Xavier and became Onslaught. I can't imagine Marvel ever putting the Shadow King on the big screen because he is far too big a threat. It seems impossible to actually get rid of him without another being whose powers are on par with him, which is actually what happened in the comics when Professor X and Psylocke teamed up. Check out this multi-universal being for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1979's X-Men number 117. Number 3. The Brood. The insect-like alien race that travels through space with the goal of finding hosts to infest with their spawn. Yuck. Brood societies work similar to how an average bug colony works, with them living in clans or swarms that serve under the Empress Brood. They're a truly savage race that not only enjoy the suffering that they cause others, they also revel in the terror that their infections cause their hosts. They don't technically have any powers, but they are incredibly resistant thanks to their exoskeletons, they have tentacles that are capable of long-range attacks, and they use their razor-sharp teeth and stingers in close combat to deliver either paralyzing or fatal poison. The Brood have been seen on Earth many times throughout Marvel history, going up against the likes of Carol Danvers, Wolverine, Fang, and a large number of the X-Men as well. Sometime after their initial appearance on Earth, a mixed team of X-Men and the Fantastic Four discovered that the Brood Queen and her squadron were leading an attack on Earth, with the first of the bunch arriving in New York City, but thankfully they were stopped rather quickly thanks to a Cerebro-enhanced Emma Frost. They have been seen around since, but I'll let you discover what happened for yourself. Now, I really can't see Marvel bringing this alien race to the MCU as they are anytime soon. Maybe if they weren't partnered with Disney they would be willing, but I can't imagine their parent company would be cool with a bunch of malicious insect-like creatures getting people pregnant Predator style. Check out the Brood's first appearance for yourself in 1982's X-Men number 155. Number 2. Demogoblin. Jason McIndale Jr. had enough of losing against Spider-Man and the Green Goblins, so in their quest for the power that he craved, he ended up following a bunch of demons back to their lair to confront their Dark Lord. Impressed with his efforts and will, the Demon Lord bestowed upon him superhuman abilities through a demonic possession. However, the demon proved to be incompatible and ended up ripping away from his human host and began living separately as the Demogoblin. Determined to destroy all sinners and redeem himself, the Demogoblin went up against the likes of Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, Venom, and even Jacob McIndale Jr. because they were the only ones willing to stand in his way. After the Demogoblin's initial death from a church pillar crushing him, he was resurrected by Carnage using Shriek's body as a new vessel, and dubbed himself the Demogoblin now. Alongside her new BF Carnage, she traveled around with Manwolf to hunt down Misty Knight, and she would have killed Misty Knight if it weren't for Manwolf intervening. In a more recent storyline that takes place after Dark Carnage's death, Demogoblin started calling herself Saint D and basically started her own religion. Considering that Carnage is too scary for the MCU to bring in and that they play such a large role in the Demogoblin story, it makes sense that this character wouldn't be introduced anytime soon. Not to mention that they are totally fine with killing and do whatever they think is necessary. Take a look at this terrifying creature for yourself in their first appearance as the Hobgoblin in 1989's The Spectacular Spider-Man number 147, or feel free to skip ahead to their time as the Demogoblin in 2019's Absolute Carnage Lethal Protectors number 1. Number 1. Null, the Symbiote God. Once an ancient malevolent deity whose existence predates the universe itself, and was originally content to just drift through the endless abyss that existed before time itself. When the Celestials started creating the universe, Null was awakened by the light of creation and was pretty pissed because his kingdom of darkness was pretty much ruined. After killing one of the Celestials, he was cast back into the void once again, and then he created a symbiotic suit of armor out of the darkness he commanded and started his journey across the universe with the goal of getting rid of the other gods for good. The only weakness that Null has is against the light, which refers to the various powers that are wielded by the cosmic entities. Null is the one responsible for the creation of these symbiotes that we're all familiar with, you know, the ones that make up Venom and Carnage. He's the reason we have two of the most terrifying villains in the Marvel Universe, and that alone makes me want to go nowhere near him. Not to mention, he's the one who gave Gore the God Butcher All Black the Necro Sword. Historically, we've seen Null go up against Silver Surfer and so many gods, coming out on top every time, and then in modern times we have seen him go up against symbiote users like Venom and Spider-Man. I can't imagine we'll get to see Null in the MCU for a couple of reasons, the biggest being that Venom isn't in the MCU, but that's not my whole argument, don't worry. Null is a literal god capable of pretty much anything that he sets his mind to, and he is powerful enough to create symbiotes and beings that can overpower any of the heroes that we've seen both on and off of the big screen. He's too much of a threat right now, but that doesn't mean that I'm not hoping he'll show up one day. Trust me, I really want him to be there. For now, read all about the symbiote god for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 2018's Venom Volume 4, Number 3. Number 10. Vermin. Edward Whelan from Earth 616 had a pretty average childhood aside from his abusive father, which is actually what led him to the streets and crime. Now, it's not exactly known when, but at some point he got the attention of Baron Zemo and was subjected to many tests that gave him various rat-like traits and abilities. Aside from the obvious rat-like appearance, his strength, stamina, speed, and durability were boosted to superhuman levels, and he also gained the ability to communicate with and command rats that are up to 2 miles away. After gaining these powers, he was sent out to end Captain America. However, he ended up being overpowered overpowered by Cap and taken back to S.H.I.E.L.D. for interrogation. He managed to escape fairly quickly though, and since then he has been a pretty big thorn in both Captain America and Spider-Man's sides. However, they have actually used him to their advantage sometimes, as Spidey once used him as bait for Kraven the Hunter. Whelan, since his introduction, has been a part of the Hood's gang and the New Revengers, so he has definitely been in his fair share of crazy fights and done some terrible things, like the time he almost straight up murdered Spider-Man and would have succeeded if he wasn't interrupted. The reason I think he's too scary for the MCU to bring in is because he not only looks utterly terrifying, but thanks to his genetic alterations, his mental capabilities are at subhuman levels, meaning he pretty much works on primal instincts alone. I mean, sure, he's still able to talk, but his reasoning skills are not the best, so he's pretty ruthless. And let's not forget that he also likes to eat people. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1982's Captain America number 270, and let me know if you agree with me. Number 9. One Above All. Residing in the lowest depths of the underworld known as the Below Place, the One Below All is the dark counterpart of the One Above All. It is the source of the mutagenic third form of gamma energy, which allows it to use gamma mutates to manifest itself whenever it feels it's necessary. The One Below All is actually what gave the Hulk his powers in the first place, as the gamma bomb test partially opened the green door that Below was kept behind. Fast forward through some really cool events that you should definitely check out for yourself, and we see the One Below All possess the bodies of Brian Banner as the Devil Hulk, Walter Longkowski as Sasquatch, and the Absorbing Man, which led to the final battle of the Immortal Hulk arc. Revealing its true form, a giant green cloud of crazy gamma energy, the One Below All torments the Hulk so much that Bruce Banner and the Hulk actually separate. However, Absorbing Man was able to reroute the gamma energy the demon was using back into the Hulk's body, and with one powerful thunderclap, the One Below All was stopped, at least this time anyways. One Below All is too terrifying for the MCU in my opinion because he's literally a god, and the reason behind all the gamma radiation and the gamma power being such as the Hulk and Abomination, you know, etc. I mean, who knows? Honestly, if they want to send Mark Ruffalo off with a great story, they could finally give him his own movie trilogy and have this demon as his final battle. I highly doubt it though, so in the meantime, check out the One Below All in his first appearance in 2018's Immortal Hulk number 5. Number 8. Nightmare. This supervillain is basically the Freddy Krueger of the Marvel Universe, and if just knowing that isn't scary enough for you, then buckle up. Classified as a Class 3 demon able to capture a sleeping person's astral form, Nightmare's whole thing is he's able to bring their form into his realm to torture them, and the effects of that can last for hours even after they wake up. Nightmare has been a major pain for many heroes in the Marvel Universe, including Peter Parker and the Hulk, and none more so than Doctor Strange. That poor guy seems to get the biggest and baddest baddies out there, but I guess that's the price you pay when you're the most powerful sorcerer. Strange has made it clear that he makes a regular habit of casting a protection spell before he goes to sleep, so he does not have to go toe to toe with this villain. Later in this character's run, we see Nightmare growing stronger by the minute, able to access human minds through the American dream alone, and he caused these people to go on a violent rampage until he was finally stopped by Captain America and S.H.I.E.L.D. Skip ahead a little bit more and we actually see the death of this character up against Loki, in which the trickster god used one of Iron Man's automated cars to just straight up flatten Nightmare. So hey, at least we know he can be killed, right? What makes him so scary to me, and definitely too scary for the MCU, is he's literally the boogeyman. He's capable of wreaking havoc at any given time. His ability to terrorize the mind and attract his victims is in a never-ending horror, makes him uniquely scary, and I doubt lovable Disney would ever want to cause nightmares in their viewers. Now, there is a new Doctor Strange coming out in 2022 though, so maybe we'll get to see this villain, or maybe we'll get a mention of them. For now, check him out in his first appearance in 1963's Strange Tales number 10. Number 7. Shumagorath. Older than time itself, Shumagorath is essentially Marvel's take on a Lovecraftian eldritch horror. It is an unknown cosmic entity that used to run Earth before we pesky humans came along, so as you can imagine, Shuma takes offense at this and often comes back to reclaim his old stomping ground. Doctor Strange is more often than not the only one who can actually fight this thing without completely losing his mind in the process, but as cosmic beings are known to do, it can never really be truly killed. It is considered to be the primal power of chaos and the greatest of the old ones, and aside from immeasurable strength, Shumagorath is also capable of creating powerful blasts of mystical energy that can literally wipe out planets. Although its presence is usually unexpected and unwelcome, Doctor Strange did have to summon a small part of it once during Thanos' invasion of Manhattan to wreak havoc on the city and draw attention away from themselves. Outside of our own reality, Shumagorath has invaded many other Earths such as Earth 9411 and 9997. However, it is very rare that they come out on top because there is usually a Doctor Strange or a group of heroes there to put a stop to them. This terrifying villain is a bit too scary for the MCU in my opinion because, Well, I mean, just take a look at it. It is literally a massive eyeball and tentacles, just like a real Cthulhu vibe going on, and I'm not really a huge fan. We might end up seeing him in Multiverse of Madness, or even in whatever the third movie will be for Doctor Strange. A Lovecraftian elder god would certainly be a badass final boss for Doctor Strange. Check out Shumagorath for yourself in 1973's Marvel premiere number 10, and let me know in the comments if you think an on-screen version could be on its way. Number 6. Demon Bear. I mean, from the name alone you can probably guess why this one is scary, but just stay with me, okay? Created by a villain with a cursed knife, Demon Bear is a corrupted Apache bear spirit. He haunts the dreams of Danielle Moonstar of the New Mutants because he was actually made from her parents. In her nightmares, he tells her he killed her parents and that she's next, so in a way he's actually linked to her psionic abilities to create illusions, except his illusion is more of a demon. Like a regular old bear, Demon Bear has the vicious tendencies you would expect from a wild animal. However, there is a lot more than meets the eye. Drawing his powers from negative human emotions, Demon Bear can also teleport, transform, and corrupt human souls. He has gone up against other Marvel characters aside from the New Mutants, including Ghost Rider and Warpath. However, it was actually Psylocke who ultimately drove out the demon and saved the spirit bear within. He actually hangs out by her side as a companion now, so I guess he did get to redeem himself in some way. I think this character is way too scary for the MCU because he is literally an all-powerful bear that is capable of tormenting people. And not to mention he feeds off the negative emotions, so he only grows stronger the more the person doubts their abilities around him. That's just too much for one character, and I really can't see Marvel bringing him in anytime soon, so why not check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1983's New Mutants to tide yourself over until we finally get to see him in all his furry glory. Number 5. Gorr the God Butcher. Born on a planet with no name, Gorr was taught from the very beginning to always trust the gods. However, they never seemed to answer his prayers. Stricken with grief after the loss of his parents, wife, and son, Gorr completely gave up hope and renounced his faith from the gods. However, while wandering the desert, he actually encountered the god Null while he was engaged in battle with another god. With confirmation that the gods are real, Gorr was needless to say pretty mad. And when the one god asked for help, Gorr actually used a piece of Null's symbiote and created the all-black Necro Sword to kill it. From then on, he vowed to take vengeance on all the gods for ignoring his prayers, and thus began his journey as Gorr the God Butcher. Wandering around the universe, Gorr absorbs the power of every god he comes in contact with, torturing and killing along his warpath. That is until he finally meets the mighty Thor. The God Butcher storyline ranges across eons of time as Gorr absorbs the ability to time travel, and ends in an epic conclusion against 3 periods of Thor's life. Young Thor, Avengers era Thor, and obviously Old King Thor. Now I doubt Gorr will ever grace the screen in the MCU because he is just way too powerful. Equipped with the Necro Sword he carries around, he has the capability to literally slay anything that comes his way. If he was introduced much earlier on, he would have been a much bigger threat than Thanos. Also, you know, just a man who's lost his faith and has nothing to lose is definitely not someone you want to mess with. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2013's Thor, God of Thunder, number 2. Number 4. Annihilus. Known as the Living Death that walks or the Lord of the Negative Zone, Annihilus is an insect-like creature with some truly insane power. He was exposed to an object called the Cosmic Control Rod, which extended his lifespan and gave him his powers. These powers include continuous rebirth, superhuman levels of strength, speed, durability, and stamina, and flight of course. Obsessed with protecting the rod, he did absolutely everything he could to keep it from everyone else until the Fantastic Four took it away from him. Annihilus has at various times been the ruler of the Negative Zone, controlling its inhabitants via his powerful Cosmic Control Rod. He first encountered the Fantastic Four after Reed Richards discovered how to travel to the Negative Zone from Earth. Over the years, he clashed with the Fantastic Four on many occasions, often with the group foiling his plan to invade Earth. He would later lead an enormous fleet of spaceships from the Negative Zone into the main universe, setting off the Annihilation Wave by destroying a ton of planets. The Armada was opposed by a number of cosmic heroes such as Star-Lord, Drax the Destroyer, and the Silver Surfer, and was thankfully stopped by the cosmic entity Galactus, with Nova killing Annihilus in the process. He was later reborn as an infant in the aftermath of the Annihilation storyline. But other than that, we have seen Annihilus go up against the likes of many other heroes, and he has been a worthy adversary to say the least. Now I doubt we'll see this character in the MCU anytime soon just due to their immense power and ability to literally broadcast intense fear into the others, the likes of which has even been able to shake the Hulk. It's possible that we'll see them later on once more powerful characters such as Nova and Adam Warlock are introduced, but they are too big a threat. Give their story a read for yourself, starting with 1968's Fantastic Four Annual number 6. Number 3. The Maker. Now, unlike his Earth 616 counterpart, Reed Richards is about 20 years younger, born into a completely normal family, and God, what was it? Oh yeah, he's insane. Now I'll try not to spoil too much of the story for you because I really think it deserves a read, but I will do my best to give you just the basics. Following an explosion that left Richards presumably dead, the Fantastic Four mourned his loss, but in reality, he's actually alive and well, and he actually set off the explosion himself and was responsible for a ton of other attacks around the city. Convinced that he knows how the world should be run from now on, he is willing to do whatever he thinks is right, regardless of the consequences. Thankfully, he is stopped by a group of heroes and he is flung into the negative zone. But it didn't take him too long to get back though, and he easily took over most of Europe. Fast forward a little bit and we see him form the Dark Ultimates, but they were quickly defeated by the power of the Infinity Stones. Teaming up with Cabal of Earth 616, Richards was able to manipulate the Ultimates into prematurely attacking the Earth, and do I got you interested in the character? Good. I'll leave the rest of the story for you to read for yourself. What makes the Maker so terrifying is that he is so intelligent that there is really no way of defeating him, and since he has the ability to literally stretch his brain to make himself even smarter, he is always 10 steps ahead of you no matter what you do and what you think. Of course, we don't even have the regular Mr. Fantastic in the MCU yet, so even if they have been considering integrating this character's introduction is definitely far off. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 2004's Ultimate Fantastic Four #1, or feel free to just skip ahead to when he is the Maker by taking a look at 2011's Ultimate Comics Ultimates #1. Number 2, the Skinless Man. If you were ever wondering why they called Wolverine Weapon X, well, here's your answer. It's not an X, it's actually the Roman numeral for 10. Now with that in mind, meet weapon number 3, the Skinless Man. Harry Pyre used to be a barrister during the Cold War, and he was actually very good at his job thanks to his mutant power, elastic and multi-sensory skin. Designated Weapon 3 by the Weapons Plus program that augmented his strength and powers, Pizer went on to do some pretty terrible things, and all of that finally caught up to him when Phantom X shot him, stole his skin, and left him for dead. Now with no skin, Pizer took revenge on Phantom X by cutting off his face, and was later recruited into the new Brotherhood of Evil Mutants while he was on the run from that. Once again though, everything seems to catch up to him because in 2013's Uncanny X-Force #34, he meets an untimely end and he's not really been seen since. I could go into all the other horrific stuff this guy has done in the comics appearances, but do I really need to? It should be plainly obvious that there will never be an MCU version of the Skinless Man out there. He has no skin, and his whole thing is literally putting you in a similar predicament as him. That just seems to me like you've got a formula for a character that will forever be stuck in the pages of a comic book. I also understand that he is prominent in the X-Men universe, which is not necessarily the MCU, but it's fine. I'm definitely not far off when I say that there is no way they would use this character even if they had the rights to him. Check out his story for yourself in his first full appearance in 2012's Uncanny X-Force #21. And finally, #1, we have Arcade. Nobody really knows who or what Arcade was before his life of crime. He has given so many different accounts over the years with no evidence to prove any of them. The one that seems the most true is that he killed his father when he was 21 in order to acquire massive amounts of money, and he discovered that he really liked killing, so he became an assassin. However, he soon got really bored with that and decided to use his wealth to construct a death-themed amusement park to kill people. As a skilled killer, Arcade has been tasked with killing many heroes over the years such as Spider-Man, Ghost Rider, and many X-Men as well. But all of his attempts have ended in failure. On his 29th birthday, he learned that he was a huge laughingstock in the villain community, and this made him realize that what he'd been doing is no longer a game, and that winning from this point on is everything. Using his genius-level intellect and his vast fortune, he constructed a new Murderland and trapped 16 teen heroes in it for a month, toying with them and prodding them. However, they were eventually freed, and Arcade was last seen tied to the front of the SHIELD helicarrier as a form of torture for everything that he had done. What makes him terrifying to me is that he's all about mind games and toying with people, which basically makes him the Marvel equivalent of Saw. He knows exactly what to do and say to get people to gang up against each other, and he has the knowledge and resources to execute any plan. That is way too much power for one villain to have, especially a movie villain, so I feel like we won't get to see this character on the big screen anytime soon. Maybe one day though, who knows.